I don't see why she isn't paying him as one. Is there like some
Yeah.
background check he needs to go through?
Well, he's probably not an
Probably.
American citizen, so
Oh.
yeah, probably a little bit of a loophole, I would imagine. All right. Moving on from Marjorie Taylor Greene and Milo. I guess we have to. I want to talk a little bit about Ukraine and why it matters for the left, at least according to former Bernie foreign policy advisor Matthew Duss. So, like, I don't know. I mean, we haven't talked about Ukraine in a while. It's just I
Nobody
don't know, like,
has. We're over
yeah,
it.
it's just seems like the war has grounded to a pretty brutal stalemate. I don't know. I mean, like, do you guys have an idea of like where things are at with this right now? I mean, it just seems like we gave them $40 billion, and we're just like, and also it just seems like I know the Boris Johnson government like actively is like trying to stop the Zelensky government from like negotiating anything based on concessions to the Russian government or the Russian military. But like, yeah, it just the war continues to go on. But I don't know. I found this was an odd piece in the New Republic by Matthew Duss because it goes back and forth a lot of like it's just sort of it's hard for me to like discern from this what he actually wants here, like what he actually wants from the left other than kind of this sort of vague solidarity with Ukraine against the Russian invasion. But I
I
mean,
don't
like
think
it's all very like qualified as like, yes, I know America's screwed up in the past, and like this shouldn't be used as an excuse for like why America's good again, but like I think we need to come together for Ukraine now.
I think you can never think of the audience. We talked about this before. The audience for this kind of thing as like some imagined, left that's going to do something based on it. It's the audience is potential bosses, people in the media, people. It's to make them know that he's on their team and that he understands, the greater priority of maintaining, the American project. That he's not going to sacrifice that for any leftist notions.
Yeah, it reminds me of another Dust piece. This one from, oh God, almost like 10 years ago. It was Duss's review of, do you remember Max Blumenthal's book, Goliath?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
It
do.
was about like the, hard right ethno-nationalist turn of Israel, which, obviously always an ethno-nationalist project, but more outward in its image and its elected governments. But that it's sort of interesting contrasting that review with this another I'm normal piece, as we call them, because in that piece Duss writes the classic liberal Zionist line, which you could still do in 2012, which is like, oh, I mean, like this completely accurate criticism of Israel gets it wrong because what's that famous saying? It's not acting like Israel has a right to defend itself. But of course, I'm against the occupation, which could mean anything, could mean nothing. It is interesting who gets to have legitimate security concerns. I would like to see if Duss still stands by all those statements on Israel. I would imagine that he would try to weasel his way out of it because the past few years with Israel since Trump have been very tough on liberal Zionists.
Yeah.
But they've just gone elsewhere. They've just gone to other parts of the world, hectoring parts of the left for not being serious enough in agreeing with the State Department, and I guess preventing some type of national liberation through posts or not being enthusiastic enough in their support.
Well, yeah, the headline is Why Ukraine Matters for the Left. Opposition to U.S. adventurism is principled, but this is Putin's adventurism, and the left must stand firmly against it. I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean,
Okay.
like, who on the left? Yeah, sure. Okay. I stand against it. I'm
Meaningless.
against yeah.
I just can't get. Who are you talking to? What button do you want them to press? This doesn't exist.
Well, I mean, I think what it comes down to is like, like solidarity with Ukraine. We have to stand against Putin, but I think what he's really getting at is that you got to be in favor of all the arms sales too.
That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah.
Yes, is that you have to. If you are, it's like if you're imagining the left as anybody. If you're in the Congress, that means you got to support the arms to Ukraine. If you're just a person reading this and you don't have any power, well, then post about it in a positive way or whatever. Don't be out there trolling us with all of your Russian disinformatia that you got from Gray Zone or whatever, or Jimmy Dore. But one way or the other, yeah, you're like American foreign policy is what you're supporting here.
Yeah, I mean, if Duss and Peter Beinart, all those like former front and center liberal Zionists, they were masters of not saying exactly what they meant, but like, it's very clear what liberal Zionism means. It's saying there is a certain amount of people, a certain amount of civilians that is acceptable for Israel to kill, a certain amount of like interference in the politics and the institutions of its neighbors, whether it's assassinating Iranian scientists or whatever, that is acceptable, and you want to keep it around that line, around what your par is, so you can go on a guilt-free Mediterranean vacation. That you'd say that without saying that. And his same thing here is like, well, there's an acceptable level of U.S. weapons that it's acceptable for them to fall in the hands of God knows who doing God knows what for God knows how long. And because we're supporting it verbally the right way, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen just by virtue of us not wanting it to happen. But you need to join us.
Well, yeah,
or you're not serious.
I'm just like going to like the end of this piece. I just want to like highlight a few paragraphs. It just says here, he writes, this solidarity has been hard to find in some of the statements from the Democratic Socialists of America. To be clear, the cherry picking of their statements by the White House's rapid response director and the left punching of floundering moderates is transparently cynical and opportunistic. Centering opposition to U.S. imperialism and militarism is an entirely appropriate starting point for any U.S. left organization, even if it's not the whole race. Hard questions need to be asked, especially now, about the goals and interests NATO actually serves. But we also need to ask hard questions about how our struggle against militarism works alongside our commitment to colleagues around the world who require more than just a call to stop the war. With that said, it's important to differentiate between the genuine anti-war, anti-imperialism of DSA and others in the American left and the pernicious authoritarian agitprop of the gray zone and the like. The right's goal is to divide the left, and we should not help them. But the goal of building a stronger left is served by identifying, engaging, and organizing with those genuinely acting on principles of solidarity, democracy, and human rights, and not wasting time with atrocity-denying grifters and clickbaiting provocateurs. So, yeah, I guess he's going at Max Blumenthal again with this piece.
Here's a little social experiment for you. Go up to any American voter, or really like anybody. Just go up to anyone and ask them, like, what do you think about the authoritarian provocateurs at the gray zone? That is more dangerous than the infamous farting in the hood prank, I will say. No one, it's hard to get someone involuntary committed, but that may do it for you.
But like, it just seems like there's a lot of like, he's like, just sort of like, he's hopping from one sort of stool to the other. Just to like, it's just, I don't know. It's like these articles like this where like he's identified like the gray zone and people like them as sort of like authoritarian agitprop, but he wants to make sure it's just one of these articles where he wants to make a point, but he wants to make sure to offend like as few people as possible. He wants to cover all his bases, and let people know that like, hey, like it's wrong to cherry pick DSA statements, but like also like they kind of screwed up, not demonstrating enough solidarity with Ukraine, I guess.
Well, that's how you know that this is written for bosses, because it doesn't say anything. It's like, why would you say any of this? And it's like, because it's not for you. I'm demonstrating loyalty.
Yeah, there's no instruction.
I will show you the acrobatics I'll go through to support your bullshit.
There's no instruction you can go off of if you're DSA or even just a poster. It's like, if I'm to break this down and give you the bullet points of your action items, it's display proper solidarity. It's okay don't worry. It's okay to center U.S. imperialism, but you have to display proper solidarity with our colleagues around the world. And does he mean like the Ukrainian left policies or parties, that Zelensky made illegal? Does he mean Zelensky himself? Is Zelensky like DSA's colleague?
I mean, like going on here, I mean, like we can see more of this sort of like hopscotch going on here, because he says, it is right to be cautious about getting drawn into something bigger than we want. It is right to be concerned that the administration's rhetoric is, to paraphrase one of the Reagan-era military's recruiting films, increasingly writing checks that its policy can't cash. Okay, so he's a Top Gun fan too. Um, Here, as after 9/11, fear of overreaction is entirely appropriate. Our foreign policy apparatus is designed to stoke and then cash in on overreaction. And our job is not to simply allow Ukrainians to write U.S. policy. Americans, all of us, are now implicated in this war. If the American people are providing arms, as we are to the tune of tens of billions of dollars, then we have a reasonable interest in and reasonable expectation of influence on its outcome. The Biden administration has made clear the kind of outcome the U.S. is trying to produce, but also rightly made clear the limits of U.S. engagement and the overriding concern about avoiding nuclear escalation. One thing the left definitely should not do, nor anyone, is buy into the narrative that Russia's war on Ukraine has restored America's mission and purpose. That our country can seem to allocate money efficiently only towards weapons and little else should be a source of shame, not pride. Observing how easily tens of billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine were moving through our otherwise obstreperous and unproductive Congress, Adam Tooze summed it up. That they can agree on that and not on healthcare or climate change policy is a sign of America's own dysfunction. Oh, that Tooze! I'm shaking my fist once again at Adam the Tooze.
Oh no,
No, but I mean, I agree with Tooze.
He is really one to he's really one to talk about crossing a line. What with how he's fucked all of our significant others.
Despite the enchantment of our political class, Russia's war on Ukraine is not a manic pixie dream conflict that will lift our country out of its legitimation crisis. If we allow this moment to be used simply to reassemble a broken Washington foreign policy consensus, we will not reverse that crisis, we'll deepen it. An influential, well-organized, and growing political left is essential to repairing this country, and that includes its foreign policy. The response to Russia's war in Ukraine is a key part of that. It is possible, indeed, it is essential to apply the historical awareness that Sontag urged and not be together while acknowledging that supporting the defense of Ukraine is the right thing for the global left to do, even if our own government is doing it. So, like, again, like, just try to, like, figure out, again, what does he want from the U.S. left here? I think what he wants is just like, okay, say all the reasonable things about the U.S. State Department, Pentagon, and foreign policy, and the fact that we can, send $40 billion in weapons to Ukraine to fight a war that we have nothing to do with, or a war that is not really in our, direct national interest. We can do that overnight, but we can't give health care to anyone. And by the way, Biden is also cutting school lunches and raising Medicaid fees at the same time. But it's just like he just wants the right. I don't know. Like he just wants to just don't go too far. Don't go too far here, and don't legitimate Russian aggression. I suppose, which is the DSA is a key factor in that, certainly, and and Russian aggression or imperialism or whatever you want to call it.
The DSA needs to privilege Ukrainians in the progressive stack.
Yeah, it just I don't know what can be done right beyond just I don't approve, obviously, of Russia's actions. I do not think it was the right thing to do to invade. I don't think that our track record, however, it does not give me any confidence about $40 fucking billion in weapons in one allocation alone. I don't know what is wrong with that. And if there's nothing wrong with that, why write this article? Why
Yeah.
Is there a groundswell of gray zone teens out there? I mean, it is again, Matt is right in that you have to read this as hey, everyone, Bernie's going to die soon. And don't worry. Matt Suss from Among Us is normal. But if you're taking it as face value, which I guess he would want other people to do since this is public or not, it's, I mean, I guess the only other way to read into this, right, is that what's happening in Ukraine now at this moment is kind of exactly what, not just us, but people like us generally in our ideological space said, where we did not approve of the invasion or operation, but we said, hey, I don't think that Ukraine is going to win. And that is certainly not happening now. A lot of the worst case scenarios that people talked about are happening, where people are signing up to defend their hometowns, which is a completely fucking understandable thing. It is a brave decision that I don't know if a lot of Americans would take, and then immediately being sent to the front lines by Ukrainian higher command and dying pointlessly. It's a very sad, fucked up conflict. I mean, even before the invasion, I recall us saying this would be a uniquely like World War I-esque, pointless, shitty stalemate, and it kind of seems like it is, and it kind of seems like any window for Ukrainian victory or strategic victory is closing rapidly, and that lives are pointlessly being lost. But I guess if an article is written in the right way, that changes that. I don't know. I don't know what to tell the people. I mean, I do know what to tell the people because they're not posting about it as enthusiastically as they were in March.
Yeah.
So maybe we should be on their case.
Not paying attention.
I mean, like it's a weird thing because it's like he goes to such pains to kind of like establish his kind of left wing foreign policy credentials, but like I think the entire piece of the article, the point of the article, is that like it is bad that the only thing our government can do is send $40 billion in weapons to a fucking in like an arms sales to Ukraine, more or less, instantly, and do nothing else. But despite the fact that is the case, like they should still send the $40 billion, and no one should be no one should be too mad about it.
Yeah.
Or you can lament the fact that like, oh, it's a shame that like all we can do is just sell weapons to foreign countries. But in this case, it's like good that we're doing so, or at least not bad. I think that's basically the point of the piece.
Please don't say it's bad.
No, you can say it's regrettable, but don't say that we shouldn't do it or that it's just like
we're being forced. We're always forever for always. A Democratic administration is they always do things because they had to. There's no other alternative. And that's how all of it has to be understood. It's like this tragic necessity, which really does like raise the question, well, what the hell do you need me for then?
Well, I would like to ask Dus and all the people who slowly removed all the Ukraine stuff out of their profile in the last month. I mean, it really, not to talk about myself here, but it really does seem as it inched closer to my birthday, the flag started going away, fewer display names that were like Russian warship, fuck off. Fewer of those. Maybe it was just Felix Jubilee mania that dispelled those. But I, in the same way that those people would ask us, like, "Oh, do you think Ukrainians should just surrender? You think they should just like fucking give up and die?" I would like to ask them now, with mainstream articles stating the obvious that it's really not fucking going well for them, that there is no conceivable path, that the incredibly large weapons packages that they probably showed up a little too late to turn the tide. What do you want to happen now, given that there's no path? Do you think they should still try their hardest? Do you think like that they should sue for peace, or are you still holding on to that it's you're being like Todd Aiken? If you think that maybe that some diplomatic solution should be found, I would like to know that, and no one has really asked those people that.
In some instances, the State Department has a way of shutting that all down.
Yeah.
I would like them to we're giving them all the weapons, but here's one thing: I would like them to stop selling Javelin missile systems on Etsy